Welcome back to another episode of That's Business. Today's guest, Laura Patterson, has helped over 300 companies replace the disconnected acts that often permeate within a business and steal time, money, and strategic capacity with deliberate, intentional, and measurable strategies rooted in creating business and customer value. Laura, there's so much we got to talk about with this as an entrepreneur. So before we dive into the greatness that is you, were you always this organized, let's create efficiencies growing up, or what were you like as a child, if you feel comfortable sharing with us?
I was a very compliant child. A quick story.
Yes.
My grandmother, my mother's mother, passed away when she was in her early 50s, so I didn't really know her. But my grandmother would go to this place to get her hair done. That was a kind of a thing in that era. People would go every week to get their hair done. And the woman that became my grandmother went to the same place to get her hair done. And interestingly enough, when one of those times, my grandmother and my to-be grandmother were having their hair done at the same time, and I was about 2 years old, sitting in a chair, just sitting the entire time my grandmother was getting her hair done. Didn't say anything, just took care of my colors, was very quiet and well-behaved. And my grandmother to be said, "What a well-behaved child at 2 years old." That was me.
What? I don't know a single 2-year-old even now that just sits still. So that's funny because my mom used to say the same thing, like high chair days. They loved going out with me because I could sit there for hours and just find entertainment. So we're vibing on that. That's
We
great.
are.
Amazing. So growing up, how did you end up being this entrepreneur, speaker, author? There's so much that is you. So walk us through, what were your teenage years like, figuring out what you want to do at 18 years old that we all have to go through. Talk us through that.
Well, so I came from a fairly observant, religious family, which probably has something to do with that compliance.
Oh, yeah.
And I was a pretty go along, obedient child until I hit about 6th grade when I told my parents I wanted to go to public school. So that was like a huge shift, and there was all kinds of activity around that. So that was probably my first time where I exercised my own independence of wanting to do something, and my parents said, okay. They let me go to public school. And of course, all the things that the people who were worried about me going to public school would happen, of course, did happen, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Of course. Yes.
Anyway, my teenage years were like many others. I was on the debate team and I was in home ec. I did all the things that were pretty common back then. I had close girlfriends who I'm still close to today, all these years later, which again were kind of common things that in my era, where people really kind of made a lot of good friends in junior high and high school, and those are still friends today. I was a member of Junior Achievement, which is an entrepreneurial organization, while I was all through high school. And I didn't really think of myself as being an entrepreneur. And it wasn't until much later in my life that I was an entrepreneur. But it was an interesting moment to be introduced by these amazing business leaders to the idea of creating a business. And one of the things I had done in my teenage and younger years was going door to door to sell world's finest chocolate. And I always say that's the moment where I realized that if you want to sell something, you better have something that people want. So you have to somehow position it in a way that is of customer value, why they would want to have this chocolate if you want to get the money. Especially, when you're 9 years old, knocking door to door, you get a lot better later on. But when you're 9 and knocking door to door, you're trying to figure it all out. So those were some of the things that happened in my early years.
It's so great too, because even looking back, I was in Girl Scout, so same type of concept where it's tough and it's like, yeah, you're cute, 9 years old, awesome, but I feel like it's ingrained to you, okay, whether it was a lemonade stand or anything growing up, it's hard to sell something, but that's great experience. So, of course, being this person, at what point did you say, hey, I want to do my own thing? Coming up with VisionEdge Marketing that you founded in 1999. How did that come to be? Because that's a huge leap and it's not easy just saying, yep, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do my own thing and figure it out.
I really had never any intentions of having my own firm, ever.
Oh, okay.
I'm married to an entrepreneur and so I don't know how hard that work is. I had been a very happy corporate employee for a couple of decades, and I enjoyed working I worked at Motorola for 14 years, which is my longest stint at any place. Other than that, were much shorter stints, a few years here and a few years there in startups, in established companies. And I'm grateful for all of that experience. My last two corporate jobs were interesting. They were the only jobs I had where the companies were ran by women. And I know this is going to sound terrible, but in the last stint, I thought to myself, if this woman can run a company, I can run a company. She was horrible.
Yes.
And anyway, so that made me think I could do it. And the timing, I think timing is everything, right? The universe brings things to you in the time that it's meant to be. And in 1999, if you could spell marketing in Austin, you could get a job. And I was in a CMO role, and I had been here in Austin for quite a while, since 1982. And my phone was ringing with people offering me opportunities. And so I thought it might be a great time to take the leap. I would just jump from the frying pan into the fire, so to speak, right? And start this company. And I actually converted those first 7 opportunities into our first customers. No more startups. Oh my gosh. But anyway, I'm grateful. We have amazing customers over the years. We've been truly blessed with stellar work, awesome projects. I mean, it's all been good. It's been amazing.
And I love your comment about if they can do it, I can do it, because it's so true. Because I feel there's so many bad leaders in the world that it's just, oh my gosh, you've made it this far. Or just especially with like layoffs happening now, we're like, no, like do your own thing. So I will say that's not terrible to say, because I agree with you. So maybe I'm just as terrible then. I don't know. But
It was my first exposure to that, though. It was a little jarring because I had worked for so many amazing, remarkable leaders. It was my first time really in a situation where I was like, just like during that headlines.
right, like people act this way. What? Right?
Exactly. To each other.
It's so freaking true. It's so freaking true. Now, of course, being in business 26 years, I mean, you've seen technology change. You've seen marketing trends change. You've seen how we even write a book, how we speak, and just the craziness that has grown over the last few decades. So how have you as an entrepreneur just like, for lack of a better term, rolled with the punches, rolled with the changes, and you're still relevant, still thriving today?
Yeah, I think pivots are important, and you need to recognize when it's time to do it. I think some of the time, looking back, we pivoted in some ways too soon, too early in some instances, and had to recognize, as for example, we have a software as a service product called Accelance that came out before people were really into SaaS. Now everyone's into SaaS, and we have a patent for it. But I think again, might have been a little too early but we needed a solution that we could use for the work that we do. So that's an example, maybe pivoting a little early and solving our own problem, and then trying to use it to solve other people's problems. And hopefully we'll see more traction with that, with Accelance, because we just renewed the patent. Funny how the government keeps taking our money. And then,
So true. Mm-hmm.
and then, sometimes we're late to the game. So for example, I've been in and using AI for many years. AI and machine learning have been around a long, long time. But generative AI, which have coming down to the masses, is only a few years. And look at what has changed. I think ChatGPT is like in version 5 something, and it's only like a little over 3 years old. So it's moving rapidly, right? Think about way back when Microsoft first came out, and when those iterations were occurring compared to when they're occurring now, right? So it's pretty remarkable. And we finally had the time to revise the workbooks that our customers use to make them have AI prompts in them. So it's taken us, so we're a little bit behind because so many people have been doing stuff in AI. We knew we needed to do it, but you just got to find, what do they say? It's the cobbler's children that never have shoes.
Never have shoes, yes.
So I think you have to pay attention to trends and do the research. We're big believers in data. It's a key core competency of our company and a key core value of our company, and know when something is actually a real trend versus a fad, because and so the AI thing is going to be around for a long time. I mean, it's kind of like, it's not going to go away, and we're going to all learn how to do it and to be more proficient at it. So even though we're 3 years into the game, it's still early. So I told my team, don't panic. We'll just make them. We'll put them out there. We'll see how it goes.
Well, and that's interesting concept too of what's a trend and what's a fad because you have to think about your own business. And I know myself, I've been quick like, oh, we need to do this, we need to do this. Everyone else is doing it, but really taking the time to use data to make that decision and what makes sense for your business. That's why you're going to be around for even more decades to come. So that's
I
great.
hope so. Thank
You
you.
will be absolutely. So, how do you work with clients? What are some of the common issues you see with other entrepreneurs, or what problems do you really fix for your clients?
So we work with companies that have relatively complex products that often take a consultative sell. So they're mid-market or enterprise companies that have like they're in industrial manufacturing or they're in technology manufacturing or maybe they're in biosciences or life sciences or some other market like that. And they're trying to figure out to grow. Oftentimes they are very product or sales centric in their approach and they need to shift. So, for example, let's say you've been around for a while and you kind of are seeing yourself not really growing as quickly as you would like. You're probably doing okay, but you're not really seeing the kind of growth that you could see in a market that's doing relatively well. And you're asking your question, why is that? Well, data, we might look at the data and we might notice that, wow, here's some customers you really are very successful, profitable customers. They're adopting your products. They have good share of wallet. They have great customer lifetime value. Here's some customers, maybe not so much. Let's go after more customers that look like this than less of customers that look like that. But you would only know that if you're looking at your data. So we help them kind of maybe think that through. Or maybe you have the largest share of a market. You already have it. Maybe you're 60, 70% of the market. And you're wondering, where am I going to get my growth from? And so now it's time to maybe think about new segments, new markets. Well, what are those? And what are the problems that the customers in those markets are facing? And where can you best solve that problem for them, right? So those are the kinds of questions our customers are typically asking us. Where can we get our growth? What data do we have that can help us figure that out? What kind of competitive intelligence do we need? How do we position them and message so that people get us and want to do business with us and that they understand that we are solving a problem? And then let's put a plan together. So those are the things we typically do.
That's great. And how are you typically finding your customers, or how have you worked and what's been most successful for you?
Oh, and I think it's getting harder. I mean, we're having this
Yes.
conversation with a group that I'm in about it is getting harder, and for several reasons, and we can come back and talk about why that is in a moment if you're interested. But we have been really fortunate because we are well established, and I'd like to think well regarded and trusted by the people we do business with. We've been fortunate to have a lot of repeat business and a lot of referral business. But we also work very hard at optimizing SEO. We work very hard also at optimizing for our friends in AI, right?
Yes.
Right. So we are paying attention to that. And, I speak at various events, which I am always honored to be a part of, programs like this, as well as on the stage, and, putting out content that resonates with people so they can see where they may be needing some help. So it comes from those kinds of places.
Absolutely. And I'd love to have the conversation of why it has become more difficult because we're facing this too with our business of finding customers. And I think it's been more difficult than we've seen in previous years. I mean, we've only been in business 7 years, don't have the tenure like you yet, but it seems to be the reoccurring theme. So I'd love to hear your take on it.
Well, and I would love to hear your listeners and your community's thoughts as well if they're having the same challenges. So I think it's kind of an interesting, perfect storm that's occurring. One thing is for us, we're a boutique. We are a very focused growth strategy consulting firm. That's what we do. And people who come to us are typically mid-market companies or maybe sometimes a little smaller, but they're typically mid-market companies or a business unit within inside a very large company. I would say that that's other two main kinds of customers we work with in the B2B spaces. And the big firms like the McKinseys and the Boston Consulting Groups and the others that would fall into that category, they have realized that there's opportunities downstream. And so they are working hard to move downstream, which is causing some displacement for many of us in the boutiques. while they're moving downstream, for whatever reason they're moving downstream, they've also jettisoned a lot of people. And those people are putting up shingles because there's nowhere to go. So those of us who are boutiques, 5, 15 people, like our company, right, and very specialists, are seeing downstream pressure from these big companies. And we're seeing freelance solopreneurs pushing up, right, who may or may not be able to do the work. And then let's add technology on top of that, where people think, well, maybe I don't need to get expert help because I'll just use one of those AI platforms and that's an expert, right? And so eventually they will figure out the difference between expertise that comes from real experience and doing the job and real work, which may not be something you can find on the internet, right? And what you can do with Gen AI that is beneficial to your company, and you can leverage that and streamline your processes, reduce some costs and overhead, and maybe do some other things as well. But right now, that's what's going on. And I think that people are trying to figure that out. And there's just a lot of noise.
There
That's
is
my
so
that's
much
my
noise.
opinion. What do you think, Angela?
I could not agree more. I think it's also interesting where we use AI for some of the marketing we do. We use AI. You have to use AI in some way, shape, or form if you want to stay relevant, of course, right? But it's also, I look at it as it's like a band-aid slapped over like a gushing well, and it's eventually going to break again where it's going to come off. So I like what you're saying of what's the difference between expertise and what's the difference between something that will just like skate you by. And I think we're going to see more of an uptick in business or wanting to work with more boutique firms like ours. I think more Q2 next year of like, okay, this year we used a lot of tools, free tools online, AI, whatever. And now it's like, okay, well, now I'm having the same issue. So I really need to hire an expert. But it's interesting. I mean, I love technology. I think it's great. What we were talking about before we started recording of can't live with it, can't live without it, right? But it's interesting. I thought we'd be a little further along. I didn't think it'd come this quick of the craziness with AI, but it's just interesting, and we just have to be scrappy as business owners here. And what do people want, and what do they need? So it's very interesting how looking at data, and if you're not looking at data, you freaking need to because it's huge and it's very surprising to see.
We use AI for our company, but we never use AI for our customer work.
That's what
That's
we do. Yep.
so. And for example, we don't use AI to generate anything initial at all. So all content that is first pass, brand new, we write that, we create that. That is not generated by an AI. But for example, if let's say I have an article that I've written and now I want to have an abstract of that article put in an email or a few introductory lines for something about that article as a social media post, then I'm willing to let an AI do. But writing my
Yes.
content, that's not what I'm willing to do, right? So I think, understand in our company, we have some guardrails around that. So nothing original is produced by an AI. We believe that human beings need to be the source of that information. We've been at this, most of us, for a very, very long time. And if we don't know and we can't figure out how to get to know, right, whatever that is, we probably need to be done. So, right? I mean, that's where you have to ask the question, are we relevant anymore to the people that we serve? But then being able to be efficient, why, coming up with the abstract or coming up with the social media post on something that we originally wrote, why not? That's an efficiency. And we were doing that anyway. So it's not like we're taking anybody out of the supply chain and not giving anybody their what they needed to do. We're just doing it faster.
Right. And that's the difference there and we do the same thing. I mean, doing resume writing, we don't use AI for it. I may run it through Grammarly to make sure I didn't miss any commas, but it's not even always right. It's not a one size fits all. And you have to take your original content and do it that way. And that's what we do too, of parsing it down for an article down to, like you said, an abstract or opening. So that's really important too. But it's interesting because I don't know if you feel this way, but for the career services we're in, we're seeing more people coming up as consultants here. Not to say all consultants are bad, 'cause there's a lot of great ones out there, but coming up as consultants and just purely using AI to do resume writing, to do cover letters. And it's like, okay, well, as a recruiter, if I'm getting 10 of the same one, I know it's written by AI. There's AI checkers. Like, we have to realize that. And same thing for you in marketing. If I'm one of your clients and I see someone else posting the same thing that you gave me, I'm going to be pissed. So it's interesting, the different schools of thought, I will say, around it. So it is very
Yes. And
interesting.
hopefully we'll both be around a long time and we'll watch it unfold. And I think the conversation we'll have 5 years from now will be very different than what we're having today. And this conversation is very different than what we were having 3 years ago, right?
Yes.
So I think it's going to become, it is not going away. It is not a
No.
fad. It is a tool. My father always had a saying, because he was really into tools and very handy and had a workshop and all of those things. And lots of people have heard me tell the story of being in a hardware store with my father. But one of my father's favorite sayings about tools was, if you can't do something well manually, getting a tool to automate it will only enable you to do more damage faster.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yes, he was a very wise man.
Very wise. We need like a pull a card a day from what your dad had said. That's great. That's a good one. I'm gonna sit with that for a minute. Jeez. Now, as an entrepreneur, we have our good days, we have our bad days. It's like the roller coaster that we decided to jump on and ride in. So, how do you keep the momentum going? How do you keep at the ideas and keep yourself going when times get tough or it's so much easier to give up?
Well, we certainly been through some tough times. We've been through the 2001 with the dot-com bust and 9/11. We went through the big downturn of 2009, 10, 11, that whole period. We went through the last one with COVID and everything else. So we know that it is a roller coaster ride. It is, businesses go up, they go down. We try to not get ourselves in too many valleys and troughs, right? We're in a bad place. That would not be good. We've been really, again, have such remarkable customers, even some that have gone out of business or for various reasons they got acquired and they don't exist anymore, or they just didn't make it. We have never been stiffed by a customer ever in 26 and a half years. And I think that says a lot about the integrity of the people that we work with and the relationships that we have with our customers. And I feel thankful every day that I have the opportunity to work with these amazing people and do work I love. And I think that has a lot to do with your momentum. Back to my father for a moment. When I was in ninth grade, and my father we had this conversation, and he took out my father was an aspiring artist, but he ended up getting married and having a family, and there was no way to make a living at that. So he ended up making his profession be a cartographer, that is a map maker, which is a different conversation, another time. But anyway, he sat down with me and he took out a piece of paper and he put it into quadrants. And he said, "Oh, let's talk about all the things that you like to do." And I said, "Oh, I made a list of all the things I like to do." He said, "Well, let's make a list of all the things you don't like to do." And I said, "Okay." We made a list of all the things I don't like to do. Now, of course, I'm in ninth grade. This list probably would be very different today.
A little
Right?
bit, right?
Right.
Yes.
And then in the next column, next quadrant, he said, "Make a list of all the things you're really good at. And then make a list in the next one of all the things you're really not very good at. You're just not very good at it." And I made a list. He says, "Okay, now let's look on your list and see the things that you're really good at that you like to do." As I told you, he was a wise man,
Very
right? And
wise.
that would be my advice. Do something you're good at that you like to do that solves a problem for the people you want to serve. And if you can do that, you'll have a reason to get up and go to work every day, because you're serving people you want to serve in a way where you bring value that you like to do.
Oh, that's incredible. Now, that was already a great piece of advice, but for someone that may be listening and resonates with that advice, how would you advise them to get started, or what other words of wisdom do you or your father, who obviously had so many words of wisdom, could provide to the audience?
So, first of all, I would recommend reading a book called The
Yes.
E-Myth. If you have not read it, it's not a new book. And I think he's got The E-Myth in all different kinds of industries now. He's made that into an entire franchise. Get the original one, The E-Myth,
So
which
good.
does not stand for electronic. It stands for entrepreneur. When it came out, I think in the late 90s, maybe you might know, Angela, maybe like 98,
I think
99.
so. That sounds right. It's been a while since I've read it, but yes.
And read that book, because that book has a lot of really valuable. I wish I read that book before I started the company, but have a lot of really valuable pieces of advice if you want to become an entrepreneur and you've been an operator and now you want to become an owner, right? An
Absolutely.
entrepreneur. So that I would read that book before I did anything. I would get some really good advisors. We've had great advisors in our company. You don't have to make it a formal advisory board if you don't want to go that route, but get us a group of 3, no more than 5, probably no less than 3 people who want to see you succeed and are going to be hard on you so that you do succeed, and meet with them regularly, whether it's as a group or one-on-one. And if you can't do that, then join a group. Find a group that you can join, but get some advisors, people with expertise and experience in running companies. They don't have to know how to run your company, but they have to be really good at running a company. So quick story, early on, 2 of our advisors from our early years have since passed away. So we have new advisors. And there's nothing wrong with changing out your advisors, but they do become a part of your work family. So, and I miss both of them regularly. But one of our advisors, Sonia, and I probably have mentioned this on other podcasts, had this favorite saying, only do what only you can do. So let me bring that to life for you. Very early on, I was presenting the financials for the company, right? I reported to a board and have since then reported to helped customers and also in interim roles reported to a board. But this was like my first time as reporting as the CEO. And so I was reporting some things and Sonia had a really strong background in finance and she asked me some questions and I didn't really know the answers. I didn't make them up because I know better than that, but I just said, I don't know. And she goes, Laura, I'm just curious. Are you a CPA? And I said, no. She goes, right. You're not a CPA. You know, they have these things called accounting firms. We should have a really good accounting firm. Not somebody on the side that just does a few little data entry things for you. An accounting firm. Go find an accounting firm, right? That can help you with your financials. And they only do what only you can do. So this is advice to people who are starting out their company who think that they want to be able to do it all themselves. You can't do it all yourself and you may not have the skill set to do it all yourself. A little while later, so most of our work, and I'm sure this will be true for many of your listeners, we put a proposal together. It's a statement of work or a proposal, and we write it and we send it and they agree to it and we have sort of an agreement, right? And you sign off on it. Along the way, we got really fortunate and we've got a big project with a very well-known publicly traded company. And they wanted to do this agreement on their paper. And so they sent over the agreement and I'm sitting down with my board, very, very excited, of course, and very proud of our team that we got this project and all of that. And I'm in a celebratory mood and I'm going through the agreement. And Sonia says to me, since the last time I saw you, did you get your law degree? So this is give you an insight into Sonia, right? And I said, no. She said, get a lawyer, right? Of course, we had a lawyer, but she was basically reinforcing and her comment being only do what only you can do. So that would be a piece of advice. And this is the value of advisors. And I have other stories if we have time, of advisors who push you or ask you hard questions or things like that. And, that's valuable. The other thing to think about is if you get big enough, your customers can be great advisors. Have a customer advisory board because you got to know what's going on with your customers. What are the problems that they're trying to deal with? You think that what you're doing is what they're thinking about. It might not even be what they're thinking about. So find out what they're thinking about. What is on their plate? Where do they see their challenges? Be in tune with your customers and where you can add value to your customers. And, doing customer research is expensive. It's time consuming, all of those things, which I highly recommend doing and which our company does. So I want to say I highly recommend doing.
Yes.
But I also highly recommend having a customer advisory board because it's a great way for small companies to have and tap customer insights.
It's so true. For any new services we outline, the customers that have been with us since the beginning have such valuable insights that you can't even get I mean, why pull other people? It's like the ones that have been with you since day one. So that's great advice. Now, Laura, you have been absolutely incredible on this podcast. So if you're listening, you want to work with Laura and her team, see all the incredibleness that she's doing, head to the show notes and to see the book, The E-Myth. It's incredible. But tune in again next week for another episode of That's Business.